Hi there, and welcome back to the FFS podcast. I'm your host, Brady, once again, and this is episode number 4 of the MWF series. And yeah, there are no parts this time because we're going to be reviewing only one game for this particular podcast, and that is the game between Bayer Leverkusen and Bayern Munich. This must have been the second or third time we've done a Bayer Leverkusen podcast, and every time we've done a review of a game that they've played, they've always lost. So probably shouldn't. It's just we've had I think the Bayer UK group. So Jason's always said that every time he comes on the podcast, he's like, every time I come on this podcast, we always lose. It's like I'm not going to come anymore. That's probably why they declined the offer this time. But anyway, here we are. We've got Aniket, who's been on the podcast before. He is a Bayern Munich supporter from India. And we've got Jackson all the way from Australia. And he's a part of the Bayer Leverkusen Australia group. And he's been, this is the first time on the podcast for him. So welcome, Jackson. Glad to have you on here. And yeah, so if you're watching or if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, please do check out our Patreon page or our membership program. You can watch the video version of that if you are a member of the podcast. We've got different tiers, different benefits for each of that. And it also helps, sustain the channel as well, make us a little more financially stable. So thanks for all that. And I guess let's start by talking about this game because it was not a pretty one, especially the first half for if you were a Bayer Leverkusen fan. If you're a Bayern Munich fan, that's the best start you could ever get off to. So, okay, I'll talk to you, Jackson. I want to ask you, so before going into this game, you've obviously had a managerial change this year. You were roughly around the top 3. Are you still in the top 3? But I mean, it wasn't going that badly. It was going pretty well. So I just want to know, how confident were you going into the game against Bayern Munich?
Well, obviously you can never be too optimistic when you come up against the might of Bayern Munich. But as far as a Leverkusen go, before the match day commenced, Leverkusen was second on the ladder, Bayern Munich were first. So obviously it's been a fantastic start to the season for Bayer Leverkusen under the new manager, Gerardo Seoane. So we're obviously somewhat optimistic. We've had a few positive results against Bayern Munich in the recent years. I know, I think we got 2 wins in 2019. So obviously we're hoping that maybe we could get a positive result and keep the title race quite exciting. But obviously it's one thing to have optimism, and then there's another thing for your team to execute it on the park as well.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a brilliant start because obviously with the managerial change, you never really know where you're going to end up, especially a manager who hasn't coached in the Bundesliga, because he came from Young Boys, and normally from the other Bundesliga teams, like you see Dortmund or Bayern Munich, they all recruited within the league itself. So you knew what Nagelsmann was going to do. You knew what a Marco Rose was going to do. So to see Bayer Leverkusen continue the good form that even they were under Peter Bosz, I think a couple of years ago, you were, fighting for the title initially, and then come January,
last year.
Things started to go quite down the drain quite fast after that game. But Aniket, let me ask you, obviously Bayer Leverkusen is a very good team, despite their moniker, their very famous moniker. But let's talk about how you were feeling before the game. Even you've had a managerial change as well. So all of that combined, how were you feeling before?
Right. So when you have a change like Julian Nagelsmann, you do expect that bedding in period for someone like him. But it's been as smooth as anyone could have hoped for him, because we have come away. We've only lost one game. Obviously, that was to Eintracht Frankfurt just before the international break. And truth be told, we should have won that game. We had so many chances. But what I felt was really cool to see is that since he's come in, now we've been unbeaten away at Gladbach, away at Dortmund, away at Leipzig, away at Barcelona, and now away at Leverkusen. Typically 5 grounds that we don't do well at. And we've come away with 4 wins and a draw from these fixtures. So it's been a perfect start for him. Just regarding yesterday's game itself, I wasn't exactly worried. Obviously, going into the international break, we went in with a defeat that which could have been like a hiccup, but I was never worried about that because because it was an anomaly. It was like kind of an exception to the rule. And I always looked at this Leverkusen fixture, and as good as they've been, Leverkusen, I always had last year in my mind, Leverkusen were top of the table, and that game was like, one of those stars, I don't know, they call it the Spitzenspiel, like the top of the table clash. It was similar this time, and just when that moment comes by and just always have it in them to get the win. That's what happened today. That was my initial thought just before the game started. And then once the game started, it's like a roller coaster, and you're just going up and up and up.
With a roller coaster, there is a huge down at some point or the other. I'm not sure the analogy works there, but okay, let's talk about that start, Aniket, because fine, it was 1-0 up, and you were cruising, and it could have been even more before the second goal hit. Yeah. But once the second goal hit, it was rapid succession. You had 3, 4, 5.
Yeah,
and who were the main key players in that, and who were the stars? Who were the ones that you felt caused all of that?
Okay, so I want to say this first off. Leverkusen got hammered by Bayern, but I feel like Leverkusen got hammered by CONMEBOL as well, who are the South American Football Federation. And the reason I say that is that two defensive midfielders, the main defensive midfielders, are Charles Aranguiz and Ezequiel Palacios, Argentine and Chilean. He's injured, right, and he's an Argentine who played in the qualifiers, and their qualifiers for some reason go stretch on till Thursday night, so they couldn't play this game. And Robert Andrich, their other defensive midfielder, had been suspended. So they did not have a defensive midfielder. They played with 6 relatively attacking players. Once I see that lineup, I already have an idea of what's kind of going to happen, even though they're really good players. And then once the game started, you asked me for players who did well. First up, I'll have to name the two on the left-hand side, Alphonso Davies and Leroy Sané. Because Jeremy Frimpong, who's coming from Leverkusen, coming from Celtic, I believe, has done pretty well for them, but he just couldn't handle them on that side. I'll get into how we've been setting up under Julian Nagelsmann, but
I can see you with the pen and everything. Like, you're all ready.
Exactly. But they caused all sorts of trouble, and he just did not have a good time against those two. That's where the first problem started for Leverkusen, and that's where most of the trouble was.
Right. Jackson, what did you think as well? Would you agree with what Aniket had to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as soon as the team news came out for Bayer Leverkusen, the obvious concern was definitely the defensive midfielders. Both are probably a bit more familiar being further up the park, Demir Bay and Nadia Memri. So, obviously those absences of Palacios and Aranguiz were definitely harshly felt. Another one also I'd probably mention was Piero Hincapié from Ecuador. He was also out, also related to the CONMEBOL international break. So, definitely didn't help our cause as a squad that doesn't have the greatest of depth, especially compared to Bayern Munich. Any sort of absences really do make a big impact on the team. I guess also, if you look at the lineup as well, I would say it's quite an inexperienced lineup overall. If you look at the average age of the players and number of senior matches, it is quite a big task to ask of the team coming up against such an impressive and well drilled European side in Bayern Munich. But look, I guess based on the earlier games this season, there was obviously a little bit of optimism, but I guess we probably are 1 or 2 defensive midfielders short, I would say.
Yeah, but given all of that, I mean, Leverkusen did play well. It's not like you were completely shambled, because some of the goals that Bayern Munich scored were either deflected off, Müller was a deflection, which I felt like the keeper could have maybe saved. Which was the other one? There was one other which
Lewandowski back heel, the one where he just tapped it in when Davies went on that run.
The Lewandowski one as well. Yeah, right place at the right time. That's the greatness of a striker like Lewandowski. But did you feel like you were probably a little hard done by, or did you feel like, in terms of the way you played, did you feel like you didn't deserve to be 5-0 down in the first 40 odd minutes?
I'd probably argue that Bayer Leverkusen never deserves to be 5-0 down, especially after 35 minutes. But yeah, look, I would probably argue that whatever team like you put out there to go up against Bayern Munich on their day, with Bayern Munich in such impressive form, they would probably destroy any team that's put in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking like Leverkusen are leading into this match day second on the ladder. The fact that they got pulled apart and tactically destroyed in the space of 37 minutes probably sends alarm bells to the rest of Europe heading into, Champions League midweek. Yeah, like, they're definitely not a team you want to come up against.
Yeah, definitely. And Aniket, I want to ask you now from a tactical point of view, what has Nagelsmann done to get it right? Because everyone looked at Bayern Munich post Flick and said maybe this is the best time since Niko Kovac to kind of play them, because like you mentioned, everyone is expecting Nagelsmann to take his time to get settled at Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
His tactics have also been questionable at Leipzig as well, especially for the big games.
Definitely.
When he probably plays a little more cautious than when he has the sort of quality in his team. So all of that put aside or put in rather, what has he got right at Bayern Munich here?
Yeah, so again, with Nagelsmann, there is a lot of Hansi Flick that is involved in this as well. That high press remains, and we saw that a lot of times even in this game. But I think the biggest point of difference here is, if you remember last time I was on with Jason for this exact same fixture, and I told you, if you remember, Niklas Süle played as a right back even in that game. He played as a right back even in this game. The difference here was that what happens is, out of possession, we're playing with a 4, and in possession, we're playing with a back 3. Niklas Süle, as that right back, he tucks in to form that centre back. It's what Carlo Ancelotti famously called a 3.5-man defense. So what happens is, assume if you take a pitch and vertically divide it into 5 parts. So you've got the 2 wide parts, you've got the centre where Lewandowski and Müller generally operate, and you've got the other 2 parts kind of in the middle. It's the inside right and the inside left channels. It's what people in Germany call half spaces. What he's done is he's employed Leroy Sané and Thomas Müller in these spaces. They're brilliant over there, especially for Leroy Sané. He was playing last season, he was on the flick, he was playing on the right wing. When he had Benjamin Pavard didn't give him that support on that right hand side. So he ended up becoming a cutback and pass back merchant, really. That's all he was doing. And I had been calling for this for a while, that he should be playing a bit more on that left hand side, but not just on the left wing, drift in slightly. Which is what he's done. And he's had Davies on the overlap. So he has that option on out wide, but he also has the option to dribble and cross it in, which is when really Leroy Sané is at his most dangerous, when that's what he was doing for Man City. I think that's the biggest point of difference. Another thing I also noticed was, for our 2 defensive midfielders, Kimmich and Goretzka, there were times when Goretzka was making those runs, and at that time Niklas Süle was dropping into midfield just to take that position for a second defensive midfielder role. So these kind of tweaks have really helped. It's, for me, if you want, the biggest difference between the Hansi Flick and the Julian Nagelsmann era is his utilization of Leroy Sané on the opposite flank. And he never says, even when he's asked in press conferences, he'll never say Leroy Sané is a left winger. I always find he'll say Leroy Sané is a left winger, but I also want him to operate in the central roles. I mean, that's how his Nagelsmann teams have always been, I suppose.
Right. And I guess that's also how he played Werner at one point, like, because Werner would be a left
Werner was more strategy,
And like you mentioned, that's the sort of role we've seen him at Manchester City, because we've seen him on the wings, but he often loves to cut in and come inside, not only cut in, but come inside and take that sort of second striker position on the left. And then, his finishing is quite impressive as well. Like, I know as a Liverpool fan, he's probably been the most effective against us. And I was so glad when they sold him. I was like, okay, at least that's like him after like Gareth Bale were the 2 people I felt like had our number no matter when we played. So I was like, okay, Gareth Bale gone to Madrid, I'm happy. Leroy Sané gone to Bayern Munich, even better for me. All right, so Jackson, I want to ask you what Soyan. What's your coach's name?
Seoane.
Yeah, Seoane. Yeah. So, what do you think he must have said to the boys at halftime? Because come the second half, you actually would have won that 1-0, given the. But I know Bayern did make plenty of substitutions, and it's because they've already through. But what do you think, or what changes did he make in the second half?
Well, I would probably argue that the game overnight was a game of two halves. Like obviously the glut of goals in the first half was not replicated in the second. So I think there were some stern words. There was obviously a few tactical changes made at halftime with Tapsoba coming on, replacing Paulinho, obviously to give much more defensive sturdity. But I guess the game was like well and truly over by halftime, as much as it pains me to say that. Just the absolute luxury that Munich had in terms of taking Davies off, even in the first half, like just before halftime. Like that's just an absolute luxury that they had there. The fact that the game was won and done by then. But yeah, it just makes you, as a Leverkusen fan, it makes you think what could have been if the setup and the role of the team was as well drilled in the second half as it was in the first. Like what could we have seen in terms of a better Leverkusen performance?
No, yeah, definitely. And Aniket, I want to ask you as well, like with regards to Bayern Munich, their backline. I want to talk about Lucas Hernandez because obviously there's a lot of there's stories. Yeah, there's stories happening about him and a potential arrest and all of that. So how much do you think must be playing on his mind, and do you think starting an important match like this was the right call for Nagelsmann to have made, like starting him? Given I'm pretty sure that it's not easy. If it is true, then it's even more scary. And I also want to know, if it is true, then do you think he should not have started the game? Like what is his punishment then from Bayern Munich?
Yeah, so I mean, we need to be really careful with our words here, but so I'm pretty sure even as a professional footballer, you might be as thick-skinned as you want, but at some point, at some level, it will be inside you. You would be thinking about it at some level. So now that you've won 5-1, it's the Monday morning quarterback. You can say, yeah, fine, it worked pretty well, but unless I have the intricacies of the things in front of me, I don't think it was the right decision to start him. I feel it's not the right message that's being sent across. Okay, sure, you can go and back him in public. You can say, okay, we've got your back. We don't know what exactly has happened here, but we've got your back. But starting him in such a key game, now that we've won 5-1, fine, fair enough. But truth be told, Leverkusen didn't really offer that much compared to what I expected them to. Guys like Florian Wirtz, Patrick Schick were probably the two bright sparks for this game in that one moment where they combined. I feel Moussa Diaby was kind of peripheral. So all in all, I don't think he had much to do. So I guess that question really can't be answered. But time will tell. We hope.
Perfect. I mean, that's as diplomatic as you can get.
Yeah, it is a very sensitive subject, to be fair.
No, definitely. I think the word allegedly has to be used every time until it's proven. But Jackson, like now that the game's done and dusted, you still find yourself third, and competing at least for those Champions League spots, which is very crucial for a team like Bayer Leverkusen. So, how confident are you that that you'll be there and thereabouts? That Sione would lead the team to a Champions League spot come the end of the season. I know we're really early in the season here, but are you seeing signs there that you could stay there for the longer term?
Yeah, I guess if you look at recent history, Leverkusen seem to be a team that pride themselves of being competitive in Europe and do frequently make the Champions League. It's a bit of a different sort of season this year with a little bit of a stumble from like clubs like Gladbach and the fact that Freiburg and Union are both also in the European spots as well. So it will make for quite an exciting remainder of the season to see where Leverkusen can finish in those placings. But I would definitely suggest that Champions League should be quite attainable with the squad that we've got and what our competition is doing. So I guess hopefully we'll see where the club goes and potentially if there's going to be any transfers made in the break as well. But it all starts this weekend in the derby against Cologne. So we'll see how we rebound off this.
I mean, there's still plenty of time. I just asked this for the sake of asking it because I know it's too early to predict what happens throughout. And I mean, like we mentioned a year ago, comes winter break, Bayer Leverkusen were right up there, and then after that, it kind of just felt a little haywire. But yeah, hopefully this time, it sustains for a longer period. Aniket, for Bayern Munich, you've had the luxury of substituting a lot of these key players, resting them for this important Champions League game. Who are you playing exactly?
Benfica. Where?
Benfica. Fair enough. So how confident are you with what Nagelsmann's doing? And, do you see any sort of title challenge from any others, or Leverkusen or Dortmund or someone else, or fairly, now that Nagelsmann's got his foot grounded, that, it's a one-way street there?
I wouldn't really want to call it a one-way street. I'm sure a lot of people would, but just for the fact that Borussia Dortmund are still up there, they still have a maniac in front of goal in Erling Haaland. I mean, he can win you matches at any given time. So if Dortmund are consistent, I would say they would be the big title challengers. Leipzig have just dropped off really badly. They're trying to figure out their stuff under Jesse Marsch. Hopefully it comes good for him. So I'm not too worried about a title challenge. As a Bayern fan, I'm pretty confident, but I can't rule Dortmund out just for the fact that they're still around there. And regarding the Champions League, I feel like if we continue playing this way, that's a big if, because we do tend to have injury issues when it comes to that period. Then I'd still say we'd be like top 3 or 4 favorites for sure, if not higher at least. So yeah, that's where I'd see my hopes. Just answering the previous question you asked, Jackson, I think Leverkusen, one, they'd be a really good watch this year, and second, I don't see that them having too many issues with the top 4 at all, because just not only on them being really good right now with Florian Wirtz and Patrick Schick being so good, with Moussa Diaby improving his end product. They've made 2 really good signings in Frimpong and Kosunu at the back. And once they get their defensive midfielders, they are a complete unit. But not just on that, but the fact that other teams have dropped off, and I don't see teams like Wolfsburg and Gladbach and Leipzig being overhauling Leverkusen. I feel third is a really, really possible aim for Leverkusen in this season.
True. And I mean, you're not too far off second as well. At least a Dortmund fight is on the line. But yeah, I think for Bayern Munich as well, it's important not to have slip-ups against like the likes of Frankfurt. I'm sure even Dortmund will have this slip-up, but it's just, the timing of it needs to be right. Like if you were to have a slip-up, even they need to at that point, because then it could really take it down to the wire. And I'm really interested to see how Nagelsmann takes on this challenge, because for him to fight for a title, it'll be interesting. He's not done that. I mean, he had the title fight.
He's never been a favorite.
Yeah, never been a favorite before. Correct. He's always been the underdog. So to see that, take him that role, is going to be interesting. And the same for Leverkusen, to see how they progress under. I'm not going to say his name again, Siane or whatever. I'm just like, I'm pretty sure I'm butchering his name, but yeah, your coach. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, I guess that's all the time we have for this particular review. Thank you, Aniket and Jackson, for being a part of this podcast. Pleasure having you on here. And I can't wait to host you in the near future, whether it be for similar such reviews or anytime we talk about the Bundesliga and other series. So thank you once again. And yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Awesome. So to those of you listening to this podcast, that's it for MWF. I'm going to say MF, but that's not right. The MWF series, episode 4. And yeah, like I mentioned, there are no other parts. This is the only review that we're doing this week. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to this podcast. If you do like it, then please do follow the podcast. You can do that on several different podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it, we're probably there. You can also check out our YouTube channel, where we do post a couple of videos from our other series that we do. We do like tier lists and stuff like that. So fun stuff that we put on YouTube. We'll also be putting a few snippets of our original series, the FFS series, out there. So you can check that out. Follow, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, check out our Patreon page. Like I mentioned, helps the podcast, helps us get better equipment, release more episodes for you guys, more content. So all of that, you can check it out. The links are all in the description. So I guess that's about it for this particular review. I'm your host, Praddy, once again. You stay safe and see you.